Bam,
Damn,
to bam,
damn,
to bam,
damn,
it
damn.
down. Welcome to our podcast featuring
Chris Taylor.
Mason Shots and Gavin Snow, who is not with us at the moment. Today, we're going to be going over the informalities of the parking permits here at Rogue River High School. We're going to be conducting a couple interviews with staff and students to compose a conclusion on whether parking permits are really necessary. Stay tuned. Hey Chris, don't you just love paying for a parking pass here at Rogue River?
Yeah, I just love paying for a parking pass to park in a public parking lot.
Yeah, isn't that great? I mean, so much freedom, right? Like we can choose any spot we want. We don't even have specified spots, and we don't even get to paint our spots either. We don't get to decorate or anything. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's just great. It's awesome.
Next, we're going to be going into our first over the phone interview with Mrs. Strickland. She's the art teacher at our high school. Give us just 1 second to get her on the line. Okay, I'm ready, Strickland.
All right.
So, you're a teacher at Rogue River High School. What do you teach?
I teach art and
Oh,
yearbook.
awesome. And since you're a staff, the parking passes don't really have too much effect on you. You don't have too big of an opinion on that.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't have to pay to park here.
Sure. Have you heard the voices on why we aren't necessarily for the parking passes, as in we have to pay out of pocket and provide proof of insurance and driver's license, and it's a whole big thing when it shouldn't really be.
Do you believe that it's not a big deal?
I think so. Yeah, I think that we should have the ability to park without having to pay. Um, Or, I think if I knew I was going to have to pay to park, I'd just start parking at the church across the street and then walk
Right.
over.
Yeah.
Um, but I
I
think, go
I
ahead.
think the paying part makes sense. Or like you not wanting to pay makes sense. I mean, what is it, $10 or is it more?
I believe it's 20.
Oh, okay. I understand that you guys not wanting to pay. I think that that's fine. Because I mean, there's not necessarily any upkeep happening in the parking lot. I think that if you guys were able to pick your spaces and everyone parked in the same spot and you guys were able to decorate your spaces, then I would understand the payment portion because
Mm,
you would be, like they have to clean it every year and like the upkeep of the parking lot. But since that's not really happening right now, I think that you guys paying isn't necessarily important. But I do think having your license and registration on file at the school is important because I know some students come to school and they drive cars when they don't have a license or insurance. So I think it's like that portion of it is mainly a safety piece for you guys and for us, for the school, just in case something were to happen, like someone get in an accident or something like that. And like if someone's driving without insurance and there was an accident, then the school could get in trouble for that, I'm pretty sure.
Well, what if that's the student's only opportunity to get to school? It's a car that's either unregistered or uninsured, and they live at a spot where the buses can't necessarily get to them, and that's their only mode of transportation in order to get an education. So when is that acceptable?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that that's really an issue for a lot of people. I mean, if I didn't have registration, I would have to get to work, you know? It's
Right.
kind of like a grown-up thing that you have to have. I mean, you can risk it, but I mean,
Yeah.
if I didn't have registration and I was driving to work and I got in an accident or I got pulled over, like I would be fined and I could get my license taken away. And especially for kids who don't have their license or only have their permit, they can get their license taken away and then not be able to drive until they're over 18. So I think it's like a safety piece. So I
Sure.
understand what you're saying, like, oh, these kids can't come to school and their only option is driving themselves. Or, I mean, I'm sure that the school could help get like a small bus or have the principal or someone come and pick them up for school. I would consider that maybe an option. if they did not have transportation to school. Because I do know some kids live in Medford and they have a small bus come pick them up.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. Strickland.
You're welcome. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too.
All right, and that's our phone call with Miss Strickland. Thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. We really appreciate your input today. Some of your points that you made really helped shed some light on the pros of why having a parking pass and parking permit setup is important. But also, I'm not really sure if the pros necessarily outweigh the cons. What do you think about what Mr. Strickland said, Chris?
Yeah, well, I thought the idea of safety in general,
Safety, yeah.
like making sure everybody has the correct documentation, like driving legally, making it to the school legally, not getting in trouble.
Yeah, because she made a good point that could come back to bite them. So it's
Yeah,
a good idea to be on top of it.
Even if it really is their only way of transportation, they can't ride the bus or get a different ride to school.
What's up? It's Gavin. Currently being a part of the podcast outside of school. I'm currently golfing it up, so wasn't able to make the cut for being at school podcast. But I gotta say I think I'm on on the edge here, a little bit on the side with Strickland. With we got to make sure we got documentation as far as like you're allowed to drive and you're not being a little goofy goober driving your car without the legal privilege. But also like paying for a spot in a parking lot that's like on a scale from 1 to 10, like best parking lot I've ever seen to like worst parking lot I've ever seen. Definitely like maybe like a 5 or a 6. It's aight, nothing fancy. And I don't get to paint my spot, so that's for sure like major bummer, dude. But super cool. Other than that, I mean, yeah, I think I think it's probably in the best interest of the school to make sure everybody's parking safely, driving safely. So, yep. Anyways, got a lot of insight today about parking it up and driving your little vehicle to school and paying that little fee there. And I made a little bit of an appearance, so shout out Miss Wallace, shout out Mason and Chris for having me on the podcast. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Yep.